Hey guys, I'm here to get into Waking Life, which is a Richard Linklater film in the year 2001. This is a uniquely experimental era for Richard Linklater because he made the film Tape as well that year, which is like a very short film that he made entirely in one location, feature length like an 80-minute range, but nevertheless, it's just uniquely in a dark. That's a dark film. This, however, is basically a remake on the foundation that Richard Linklater laid out about 11 years prior with the film Slacker, but this kind of challenged me at first because honestly, this kind of animation really typically is not my thing. But I think I'm going to give this one exception to still giving this as a perfect film because this screenplay is genius. It's a better script than Slacker, although I prefer the directing of Slacker. I think this script elevates it to a better place. And when I sit down and read the script, I feel like I'm witnessing one of the greatest films ever made. So I kind of just give in to what it's doing because it just feels like it's just taking you through the most entertaining philosophical course of all time. And I think the whole idea behind Richard Linklater, sometimes that kind of talk can get irritating, but the idea of him is to kind of satirize all of that and kind of have a slightly absurdist outlook. Not quite as absurd as I feel like The Big Lebowski, but all the same. It's just like a lot of talk that it's like a take of it what you will, because a lot of just a lot. It kind of looks at aimlessness a lot, and like how much of our talk is aimless, and how much of that talk is actually generating somewhere. And I think the way it looks at it is actually really entertaining effortlessly because it's just because the characters feel very down to earth, and it just feels like you're in down to earth situations of kind of larger than life people minds kind of coming out, and like it's the kind of people like it feels like it's borderline like irritating to hear, but somehow it turns out to be okay. I'm glad I went through that. That was nice, in a lot of ways. And so it's a bit of a challenging film, but it always comes back to me as okay, this is a perfect film, and it feels like it's just the fine balance of a philosophical approach, but somehow like it does feel like a pretty it's hard to say. Maybe this is in itself a bit of a pretentious film, but I feel like it has a very clear outlook on. But I feel like it's satirizing pretentious people, which is like the state of that. And I feel like giving into that, maybe I love the animation style because it is kind of like an experimental sort of warped, look at just creative minds in general. So I love pretentious. That's not a negative thing in my head. I think that's the dissociation. A lot of people read pretentious as like a bad thing. I think I see that as a good thing. I'm like, okay, that means a person has confidence and they have a fully realized vision of their outlook on life, which beautiful. I see pretentious as a beautiful thing. It's like as I embrace it in my own, I seek to love it pretentiousness in other people, just as much as I love it in myself. Yeah. Yeah, this film is really interesting. I think Linklater is one of those caring men of directors of the human condition in the modern sense. Like one of the perhaps the best, the American director who just really is the most gentle and seems like he sincerely cares a lot about the state of humanity in America. And it just feels like a lot of ideal sort of conversations, dreamlike conversations as they go. And some of these just feel like it is life changing. I go through these conversations and it's like, man, it does feel pretty about most of these do feel like it somehow is life affirming and transcendent. Well, Slacker kind of feels like it's a little more aimless. It's kind of looking at how like a lot of beautiful talk that just kind of doesn't ever go anywhere except for just in the air, and turns into dust. Never heard, never left a remarkable impact. And Waking Life is a slightly more life affirming than that, because I think a lot of this is kind of the essence of having a larger than life mind. Sometimes it goes to beautiful situations, sometimes it goes bad places. It's just kind of all over the map in the full spectrum. It's kind of just humanity in a lot of ways. And again, it's like Linklater. I think what I mean by Linklater and experimental movies, it's like sometimes he can have a strangely cold shade to him, and I think I'm really fascinated with that because typically Richard Linklater films express warmth. They're very, very easy to just dive into as far as just a dream, like a very dreamy and rosy outlook in general. But it feels like occasionally Slacker kind of had this. So in this film, Waking Life, it's like he's a little cold-hearted. It feels like he's looking at philosophy. He's not really. The tone isn't the same kind of friendly. It feels like in its own kind of way. Even though it has like a charming, laid-back tone, it ultimately feels a little more intense. I love that side of him whenever he does it effectively, like he does here in Slacker. Tape is a great thriller too, but I think he lays it better when he's being philosophical because it's just he is an extremely philosophical man. But often enough, his films are so lighthearted, entertaining. You don't really realize how freaking philosophical his films actually are. But I think here he's just honing in completely on that, and it feels like it's almost just like kind of sometimes like again sometimes you'll want to question like this kind of talking like is this too conspiracy theorist, is this too over the top, is this too weird? And then it's like more often enough if you give it the time of day and flesh it out the canvas to the right places, a lot of these conversations are beautiful. And that's what I think makes this film like and it's hard to recommend this film to everyone because this is a pretty experimental film, and it does challenge me. Like I have basis because this animation style is seriously not the best, but because it's what the script is doing, and I think reading the script alone, and just because I can tell that script is geniusly written, and I think just the more I read that, the more I kind of forgive. I don't kind of forgive. I accept what it's doing with its visuals, and it's just trying to be its own kind of plane of conscious entirely. It's like, and it's not meant to be amazing visually. It's meant to be a little bit dirty in a sense, but that's kind of part of it. It's almost like having genius talking to like a dirty atmosphere, and it's like, okay, well, there's truth to that. Richard Linklater, I think, is just capturing his own kind of truth with that, and it turns out to be quite a life affirming film. A lot of this talk really is really resonating in a positive, motivating kind of way, but and a lot of it goes against just like being over the top revolutionary. A lot of it's how you can be big time, but like do things that are just more patient, or just creative, artistic, instead of just like, doing anything chaotic, actually acting on chaos, feeling out chaotic moods, but then honing that all in and, control your chaos. That's the idea in the end. That's a lot of this film just communicates to me in a lot of ways. And I'll say I think it's perfect. If you're interested in a lot of philosophical dialogue and the motion of a lot of just characters going from extreme place of point A to point B, because you just have such an adventurous outlook on life, that I highly recommend this film strongly to you. That's Waking Life. It's a one of a kind for Richard Linklater.